Anything on my teeth?
No, man, those things shit fucked up my vision, dude. Those things are white. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Atlas Hour. Today we have with us Michael Warner from Marek Health. Michael is a health coach over there, or a PCC. The term is pretty interchangeable. We used to call everybody patient care coordinator, but then we just kind of switched over to the term health coach because you guys do so much more than just coordinate the care that the partner providers kind of lay out for them. You know, you do a lot of coaching, and that's what you do in your other side, your other job, right?
Correct. Yeah. It's been
man.
A lot
So
of time.
maybe you could tell us kind of what brought you into this space, Marek Health, human optimization, and bodybuilding, and all of that. Kind of give us a little bit of background on you.
Yeah, absolutely. So really background stems from kinesiology undergrad, and just diving into health, fitness, and wanting to selfishly just learn more about the body and myself, so I can increase my performance, increase my aesthetics, just have the overall look. And from there, just dove into different style of training. It really wasn't even bodybuilding at first. It was more like calisthenics, and I even competed in like freestyle calisthenics stuff.
Oh.
Just doing all like crazy flips and stuff like that. And then,
Cool.
it's pretty cool. Like all these handstands everywhere. That's how people kind of knew me. It's like I had handstand everywhere. And from there, just really after I graduated, I wasn't sure which direction I wanted to go. I thought maybe I wanted to be more on the clinical side. So became an EMT. I thought I wanted to go the nursing route. From there, I became an exercise physiologist in cardiac rehab. And then it was great, really wonderful, learned a lot. So I, taught an older demographic. I taught a younger demographic where I coached kids too. And then I just dove into the personal training space. As a trainer at Facebook headquarters, and then kind of coached one of the VCs on the board there, and traveled all over. And then I actually got into the supplement world for a little bit, and I started my own supplement company. And so this entire health, fitness, nutrition space, I was really just in and dove into, and spent time, whether it was through Precision Nutrition, and then, finished J3U and through Sam Miller's program, and really just all encompassing health, fitness. Meanwhile, just pursuing my own passion, transition from bodybuilding, or from calisthenics to bodybuilding, started competing a couple of years ago, and really just explore that, got into it. And I actually had heard about Marek initially through Fuad's podcast, and ended up shooting Marek an email like late one night, and heard back from them. And it's kind of how I ended up in this space, really, long story short. So
nice. That's super cool. I like doing these, and we've become friends, but I didn't know any of that stuff about you.
Yeah.
I met you and Josh on the same day, I think.
That's
did
right.
you guys come on the same time?
We did.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, had to do all of our awkward intros in the or the Westin, whatever hotel it was, a little lobby there with everyone.
Yeah, that's right. Cool. So yeah, it's been super cool, especially like, just getting to meet Josh with, the first time, just having somebody else in person. And really, I think meeting people in this space has allowed me to just grow as an individual, learn so much. There's, in this space, it's like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So it's just been an awesome place to be in.
I think that's always going to be the case. Are you familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Deal with that big time. Imposter
for sure.
syndrome.
Yeah. So for those that are listening who don't know that, it's basically when you start something, you think you know everything. And the more you actually learn, you think you know less and less and less. So there's this thing called it's a curve, the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it's so true. Like, when you're a first year medical student, you're putting MS1 after everything. And you're so excited to say, I'm a medical student. You're debating people on, on forums and stuff. And then when you're a resident, you're like, fuck, I don't know anything, even though you're a doctor now, and as you go on, you're still like, I don't know a damn thing. It's
right.
Funny.
Right. Yeah. I feel like that's kind of naturally how it is, but it's awesome to be surrounded by other people like that. And I think that's what makes this space so great and so valuable with the people that, we've met here. And it's just, especially just being all interested in the same thing, but knowing that, man, the human body is fascinating, and how things interact is just, it's like endless, really. So
speaking of, what's the weight difference between your calisthenic days and now?
Oh man. So I was probably like 150 pounds, 160 or so.
And
When
how tall?
I'm 5'7". Yeah, so I'm not
Okay.
very tall. I think I actually I height in for bodybuilding like 5'6¾". So I give myself a little.
Shrunk
Yeah.
from the years of heavy squats now.
Yeah, yeah. And now I guess like the heaviest that I've weighed without dieting down yet so far has been like, I think like 208, 209. Some mornings I'd hit 210, but that was it. And yeah, so now I look a lot different when I hit like 180, 175, but
You're in a prep now, right?
I am in a prep now. Yeah. Yeah.
Are we going to get a physique? Are we going to get a physique update here?
You guys want a physique update? A live physique update?
Don't act like you don't have your posing trunks on underneath right now. He was one must ask.
I want a live physique check, and I want you to do some calisthenics while you do it. Like,
yeah.
Do you do any of that anymore? That's what I really wanted to know.
I can definitely still handstand. I can do like freestanding handstand push-ups, no problem.
Damn.
It doesn't feel the same. I can back tuck, like no problem. I love it. I love being functional. It's not as easy. Like I could muscle up, no problem, but I'd muscle up and do like 360 and all that stuff. It just, and that tears up your joints. It's so tough. So
do you ever have dreams about it?
Shit, not anymore. No,
dude. I still like, I don't do many like any CrossFit or anything anymore, but I used to always, or I still do, dream about being in like a handstand walk, and like I can't run like I want to, and I'm like falling and I don't know, it's really weird. Just like how when you're running you can't get away from somebody.
You can't move,
I'm like on my hands and I can't move. I'm like, oh, my shoulders are stuck. I don't know why. It's been years. I'm a crazy dreamer. I take too many supplements.
Yeah, no, I can't do it. It would destroy my shoulders. Like I was pretty good at doing like they call like a planche, where it looks like it basically looks like you're in a plank, but your feet aren't touching the floor. So like, yeah, you're like horizontal to the ground. So pretty cool, like to be able to do that stuff and like be functional, and then like, squat 405 or whatever at the same time. But then it's just like, I had to change my focus. Like, if I want to be a bodybuilder, I got to be a bodybuilder. So
yeah. Do you incorporate any of that into your posing routines?
No, they actually don't allow it really. Like you can't do any type of gymnastic style stuff, like no flips or anything like that. Yeah, they don't allow.
Yeah. I mean, could you get into a planche if you could? Would you be allowed to?
I don't know. I don't think I'd be allowed to. I don't know if I'd want to, just being that depleted and like holding that position. It's pretty tough. So.
You'd snap a tricep or something.
Yeah, so all my shoulders snap up. But
you'd probably be the first bodybuilder to ever do that in a show, though.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think the good thing is that it really helped to develop like this kinesthetic awareness, like throughout movement all around. Like, man, if you can hold yourself upside down, freestanding, and do like handstand push-ups, no problem, like, and be vertical and not be like hanging over, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like you could translate that into just like your mechanical advantage when you're lifting. It definitely helped a lot for sure.
That's super. Did you teach yourself all of that?
All self-taught. Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
That's awesome. Just like watching on YouTube and trying to recreate it, or
not even that, man. It was just like really like some of my, one of my best friends, we always do this like stupid, like, hey, handstand competition, like let's fucking do it. And so like we'd always just do it and fall all over the place. And then one day I was like, I really want to be good at this. Like I want to hold a handstand and be good. And yeah, I just kind of dove into that world for a little bit, and it was just daily. It probably took me over like a year, I'd say. And just with no instruction, nobody teaching me. And then I finally I could pretty much do it on command now. So
that's awesome.
Don't make me though.
What got you into bodybuilding from that? Like what was what changed your goals?
Yeah. I had some friends who were into it. And then I also I wanted the aesthetic of bodybuilding. I wanted to learn how do you get that lean? Like, I was like in pretty good shape, but I wanted to be like what you saw in the magazines, or like super peeled. And, I love the idea of being bigger, and I didn't really know how to do it. So I was like, okay, I need to dive in here. And so then I just kind of fully dove in. I realized like the more I started training like a bodybuilder, the less I could do this calisthenics stuff. And it wasn't really like pairing well. And I was like, yeah, I gotta shift away. So
yeah. And how many years have you been bodybuilding now?
I'd say competitively for like since probably I did my first show in like 2016 or 2017. I wouldn't even call it competitive though. It was kind of just like my initial step into it. I did my first national show in 2018 and probably wasn't even ready for it then. But I'd say probably the last like the last 4 years, 3.5, 4 years have been like really dialed into just improving. So
That's awesome. What division do you compete in?
I compete in classic physique and also middleweight bodybuilding. So
okay, can you tell the listeners the difference between those?
Yeah, so bodybuilding is that traditional like man thong on stage, and I'm sure people have seen C-Bum or Chris Bumstead. He's kind of transcended bodybuilding. So he competes in the classic division. It kind of has that little more old school look, a little bit different style posing than your, just typical bodybuilding mandatory poses of like the most muscular, that sort of thing. So there's a little bit of nuance difference in like the posing and whatnot. But for the most part, I mean, you're still standing up there and next to nothing and posing tan down. So all the requirements are the same in terms of like conditioning and like size and shape and stuff like that. But yeah, my cutoff for like my height as an amateur, I'm not a pro. My cutoff for classic is 175 pounds, and middleweight bodybuilding cuts off at 176.25. So it just makes sense for me to do both because I'm right there anyway.
So if you were to win your pro card in middleweight bodybuilding, when you go off to do a pro show, are you now just in open or 212, one of the two?
Yeah, that's a great question. If it was bodybuilding and I just like purely just pursued bodybuilding, 212 is the next option. If I were to do classic, then I would get an extra 10 pounds. So I could compete as a classic competitor, classic pro at 185 pounds. So I'm kind of right there. And we'll see. Hopefully that's the case, because if I continue down this road, like it's a little challenging for me to make weight at 175.
Yeah.
It's more than a little challenging. It's pretty challenging. And to continue to push that while I also just love bodybuilding. I love growing. I just want to get bigger, and it's hard to like progress as much as I want to progress, but then like not get too big to still make weight. So the next weight class would be 198, which is light heavyweight, which is a huge difference. So I'm competitive now. We're in my class, but if I were to jump up to the next class, like it would just take me longer to try to compete for a pro card there. So yeah, in this weird in between.
Yeah.
Do you think that?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Adam. I was just going to say, do you feel like, kind of between the two classes, do you feel like your physique fits better? And I mean, because obviously we know it's like a different look. Do you feel like your physique fits better into a classic look or more just like a standard bodybuilding?
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, I think it fits more into bodybuilding than it does into classic. I really like classic. I don't know. And I've heard different from other people, like, hey, yeah, you look great in classic, or no, you're a bodybuilder. But I really think it's probably more of a bodybuilding look. Like I don't have like the smallest waist and just the overall shape. Maybe if I grow into it more, then maybe if I compete as a pro at 185 and just create more, structure, upper between my upper and lower, and then it gives this illusion of a smaller waist, then maybe it would be better suited for classic as a pro. But I just think it's probably structure-wise more of a bodybuilder.
Yeah. Do you think you could stay healthier being in classic versus going down bodybuilding?
That's absolutely. I mean, it's probably kind of goes without saying. Granted, there's obviously risks, either way. But if I just compare, like being, 5'7", I compete as a pro in 212. Like to be lean and peeled at 212 versus at 185, it's quite a difference. Just the amount of mass. Even if you just consider like sleep apnea or just like the size of my neck girth, trying to sleep, it can be tough, even in my off season, like I'll get pretty heavy and my wife's like, God, you're snoring like crazy. So I can't imagine if I was like, if I was like 230 or plus and trying to put on enough size to then cut down to 212. It would be healthier to stay in classic for sure.
Yeah. I probably should have asked you before going into this so we can edit out if you don't want to talk about this stuff. But is there a difference between the drugs used in, say, like bodybuilding or classic, or do you think you can achieve or use the same amount of drugs to achieve those two different physiques?
Yeah, great question. No, I love talking about this. I think we should.
Okay, cool.
I love being transparent about it.
Awesome.
I think that you can actually use the same. You can use the same drugs. Now, the dosages are probably going to be a little different. However, I think that can be misconstrued. I still think that you can get a lot out of a little, which you should.
Mm-hmm.
There's always safer risk protocols for sure. And, I definitely think as long as you're nailing like the foundation, like the basics, right? With nailing your sleep, nailing stress mitigation, just nutrient quality, on top of obviously the quantity, just nailing all these things that are absolutely necessary lifestyle wise, managing your training optimization, knowing that your recovery is a limiting capacity to your overall growth and progress anyway. So if you have all that managed, I think you can absolutely get away with less drugs for sure. Compounds, you can kind of, they're pretty much the same, I'd say, whether it's between classic and bodybuilding, honestly, like you can use the same stuff, but I do think if you push it to the open bodybuilding or even like 212, you are just going to need to maybe push things a little bit more.
Yeah. I do think there's probably pro physique guys who use more than some open guys, and there's probably some classic guys who use more than some open guys, and then vice versa, of course, but I think that just because they're open, like I've heard open guys who I think are being very open and honest with me who aren't using a ton. And then there's guys who aren't even, they're just an amateur and they're using more than that,
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. I think, we see it all the time, like what people are using, or some guys what they're, not using. I love the idea of being transparent and open about it. I've thought about creating I'm a huge data guy. I keep so much data. I mean, Josh has seen I could tell you what I've been taking, how many steps I've taken, like how many hours I've slept over the past 2-3 years, every day through prep, off season, all of that. And I think it's just, I thought about putting out hey, this is what I'm taking. This is what I'm doing. Actually, John Jewett does the same thing if you subscribe to J3U, you'll see what he takes, you'll see what he eats, you'll see his cardio, all that stuff. And I think a lot of people will be surprised at how much he doesn't take. But yeah, there's definitely guys out there who are in men's physique or whatever, who are taking way more than some of these open guys or some of the classic guys for sure. It happens across the board.
Yeah. That's how much data do you have? How many years does it go back?
Oh man, probably I'd say I probably really started digging in on it in 2019. And it's awesome, man. I can compare photos, and I don't just do this for myself. I do it for my clients. I can literally tell you because I've been coaching my wife for several years. I can tell you what her cardio was at, what her macros were at several years ago. I can associate that with her photos, how many weeks out she was. I have all of it. Some might think it's overkill, but for me, it's what you don't measure, you can't manage. So it's really cool. I've thought about trying to share that to some degree. I'm not even sure how. I keep all of it on the back end, but it's
awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it just speaks to the importance of everything else outside the drugs too, which we harp on every single podcast, every single episode. And I'm sure people are getting sick of hearing it, but I will probably keep preaching it and forever. If it was just about putting in the drugs and then going to the gym to work out willy nilly and, eating every now and then, and stuff, so many people would look great, but to get to a really top physique, it's everything else. That's the 95% of it. You're measuring everything, your steps, your sleep, the micronutrients you're taking in, the macronutrients, looking at pictures and comparing how this sleep schedule is impacting, and so the drugs are probably such a small amount of that when you're your day to day. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, yeah.
No, you're right. You're honestly
Yeah.
like you nailed it. And I see this like time and time again with either like people who come to me or clients, even myself. Like, you know, I can always use myself as an example. When I first started, I was like, oh, well, I just must need to be using X amount of tests or X amount of trend or whatever. And I did, and I fucked myself up. And I didn't even know what like macros were, how much I should be eating, how much any of that mattered. I just started taking gear, and I just started training what I thought was harder and not really smarter. And man, you can look back a couple years ago, and I can I talk about it all the time. Like I was on gears like several years ago, and you would never be able to tell.
Yep. Same story as myself. Very similar.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said too, like for somebody who is so data driven for you, Micheal, that like just knowing that you're eking out every like just small amount of percentage gain on, you know, whether you're trying to get leaner or put on size, like I just think mentally, like it's probably very comforting to know like, hey, I'm crossing off every single box. Like I didn't leave any stone unturned. And, you know, instead of relying on like, hey, maybe I just push the envelope a little bit more drug wise, like I know that I'm at least checking off all the boxes beforehand if I do need to ramp anything else up.
It really is, man. It really is, because the reason why I started doing that is because I felt like, you know, just a rat in like a rat wheel. Like I was just in the same spot, and I wasn't really making as much progress as I thought I would. And then initially, you know, just I think because of online and social media and like what you hear, you know, between the bros at the gym or whatever, oh, you just need to take more of this and that, and like this is what you need to do. And I tried all of it, you know, and it didn't work. And I was like, yeah, well, I still don't look like that. I'm still not seeing this progress. And so I was like, you know what, I need to take matters like into my own hands, track all of this stuff, and I need to like take a step back and learn like how this stuff works, the mechanisms of action of all this gear, and like, you know, how they interact with each other, how it affects, you know, me psychologically and not just like physically or for performance wise. So I took a step back, and I'm still learning, but you know, I learned a lot through that process, and now it's like it just makes so much sense. So it's super comforting to know, and that's why I dial that in so much, because I want to know that I am literally checking every box. And that's what I do with my clients. I'm like, hey, like, you know, you come to me, we're going to check every box, and we need to check every box. And it's not easy, but it works.
Yeah. And that kind of puts the ball in their court too, right? Like, hey, there's nothing left to chance here. We know down to the very step or amount of steps per day, like what you're doing, what you are doing or aren't doing. So like, there's no questions of like, hey, is this not working? It's like, well, we have data here to support whether it is or it's not.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I think bodybuilding is it's both like an art and a science, you know, and you got to kind of like play with both. And, you know, there's definitely a lot of variables there, and just considering like, you know, bringing context to a situation, but you can never go wrong just understanding how something works at a baseline, understanding the fundamental principles, and then you apply that to like somebody's specific situation, whether it's like they have either sensitivities or allergies to food, or they have like just certain perceptions about the way that they feel when they eat or train like in XYZ. And I like to remove that like dogmatic approach so much and just go, okay, hey, like let's just consider everything, and you know, we'll start with the basics and go from there. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So with full transparency on the line, what's kind of the craziest thing, like craziest cycle that you'd ever done, and what kind of results did it yield? And then I want to also hear about your best cycle, like the best yield, because I'm sure they're probably very different. That's my assumption.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. So let's see, when I had first started initially, I was probably taking somewhere around like 500 to 600 milligrams of test. Just like off the bat, I think I was only injecting maybe twice a week, but it was
Mondays
probably
and Thursdays.
Yeah, it's a Monday, Thursday for sure. You know, just like, oh, I'll do a full CC here, full CC there. Like, I don't know. And then on top of that, I think I used probably like 300 to 400 milligrams of tren. And then let me see. I also used EQ at the time too. Man, like it was just, I was easily using like 1.5 to 2 grams of gear, like just initially, like from the bat, without supporting any of this, like with sleep and training and nutrition, anything like that.
That was your first cycle?
Yeah, that was like my first.
Oh cycle. Shit.
Yeah, that was like my first one. And the worst part is the duration of time too. You know, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm good. Like, can I just run this a little bit longer? Oh, I feel, you know, of course, initially I was like, I feel like a fucking rock star. Like, I'm gonna be great. But yeah, then some of the, you know, I hit that ceiling. I hit that, you know, that wall, and I was like, okay, like I'm getting like some acne. I'm getting some hair growth. My libido went like skyrocketed, and then it dropped off. And then I was just busy as a college student, and then also like just grinding away, trying to work. And at this time I was probably like right around like working as an EMT. So like I was working like 12-hour shifts too, and like overnight and during the day, like I would just pick up overtime and stuff. So my sleep was shit. And then I would just drop like compounds off, and I'm like, okay, like, let me just like drop this off. I think I've been running it long enough. I don't really know. I didn't track like when I took it, when I didn't. And then I'm like, oh, well, should I take like a Arimidex? What is that? Like, what does that even do? And then I would just throw in like a milligram, like a day. And it's just all fucked up, man. It's all fucked up. And then I came off completely. I had done this like a few times. Like I came off completely, and then I was like, oh, I'm supposed to do like a post-cycle therapy. What is that like? So I fucked myself up, and then I went back on because I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should just go back on. Went back on, and then I actually thought that I had PCT the right way. I was using like, you know, Clomid. I'm using Novadex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm titrating like the whole way off, like for a couple of weeks. Shut myself down. So like it was still, I had probably messed myself up initially so bad that it was just like didn't matter. So after that, that's when I was like, it's still not seeing the progress that I had wanted to see. You know, it's like, okay, I'm doing this wrong. After that, really just learning as much as I could. I really saw like such a better benefit when I was like, okay, I'm going to start at like 120 to 140 milligrams per week. Just start there with test, see where I'm at, see how I feel. I'm going to inject at least like 3 times a week. Go from there, and then I'm going to add a DHT derivative instead of like a 19 NOR. I'll titrate that up, you know, and then I started there, and then I did add in a 19 NOR, but I didn't add it in for very long, and then I was like, okay, well, I'm only going to do like maybe a 16 to 20 week cycle, and then instead of coming off and just dropping everything, like I'll go back to a TRT dose, and it really just started from there, while also learning how to appropriately structure like my sleep, my training, all of it too. So I gained so much more out of that, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy. I tell people like my last cycle was the smallest I'd ever done, and I gained the most because it was the first time that I actually was like, okay, I'm going to start dialing in food. Like I will not miss a meal, and I will make sure that I'm hitting X amount of calories, even if I'm full and getting sick of it. And I will make sure that every time I go to the gym, even if I'm not feeling it, I'm going to go harder than the time that I went before. You know, I put on so much mass. Yeah. And it was the lowest amount of drugs I'd ever done. And I'm like, fuck, I just wasted a decade of just shooting shit for no reason. Like you would just be like, oh, maybe, mint, what's that? I'll add that in next time. Like, you know, and then, exactly. Yeah. Like, I don't know where my estrogen is because I'm not, you know, doing any labs, but my abs look a little bit fluffier than before. Let me take some Arimidex, you know, and then because that's what some bro they say, oh, I'm fluffy or I have water retention. Take this.
Yeah. I never did. Crazy. Yeah, I never did any lab work or anything like that. I was even pushed through like competition with like my initial coach. I like fucked myself up. I had like pitting edema afterwards and like no guidance or instruction. It was bad. And I was like, okay, I can't do this again. So it wasn't honestly until when I talked about that cycle of like adding tests and then a DHT and then a 19 NOR at the end, that was like the first time that I had really structured it to be like a successful cycle. But the most progress that I had made between then was when I was really just on like a TRT, like 120 milligram dose for an extended period of time, but push the food. I pushed the food. I didn't train 7 days a week. I didn't do double days. You know, I just like pushed the food and made sure I wasn't this weekend warrior where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to eat good during the week. And then come the weekend, like I eat like shit. Like I was in the bartending like scene. Like I used to bartend. I worked at a bar in college like for a couple of years. So it was easy for me to be like, well, fuck, it's a Thursday, it's a Friday, it's a Saturday. I can drink and have fun. But I started meal prep and bringing my stuff to work. And, after that, I really like made leaps and bounds. And I was like, okay, the drugs are really not the answer here. So,
yeah. Do you feel like, Michael, because I saw you post this the other day about how like this prep for you is the least stress, or you're trying to mitigate the most stress this time around. Do you feel like there's something to that with like, even with the drugs, that the more you throw in your system, it almost like puts you in just more of a high sympathetic, stressful environment that like almost prohibits you from either losing fat or gaining muscle? Because like you guys both, I feel like sometimes my best cycles or best growth were like on the lowest amount of drugs. So I've always wondered, and to your point too, of training less, even that like that almost is just a better environment to grow and stay lean without putting so much overall stress on your system.
Oh, 100%. Like, absolutely. It's not even just, I think there's, a ton of variables there, but if we just speak on the gear aspect, I think that, just overall less androgen load is going to put way less stress, oxidative stress on the body. And like, adding, trenin, or just not as much trenin, because it's just like neurodegenerative, like it's going to fuck with your head, So just not, putting as much of that in your system is really going to just help you mitigate that stress overall. And then you just think about like just overall organ function, lipid profile, like literally everything. So, and then pair that with, just being in this competing world for a while and going, hey, like all you can control is really your own variables. Like you just got to execute and fucking kill the day, from start to finish, and worry about that. Just focus on your sleep, on your training. Like, fortunately, I'm not food driven at all. Like I don't spend my day, even in the deepest of like a deficit, I'm not like, oh my God, when is my next meal? Like I can't wait to eat. Like I've never been like that. So it's a little easier for me, I guess, in that regard. I mean, not that it's easy, it's just I just don't focus on food so much. So all of that being considered, and then knowing that like, hey, I signed up for this. This is a privilege. Like I don't want an easy win. I want the best of the best competition. So no matter who's showing up, like if they're better than me, then awesome. But I'm gonna like, I want to win, and I want to earn it. I want to earn it.
Yeah.
So. And I just, it's alleviated so much stress, just not worrying.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I truly believe that if most people just stayed natural, but then did the exact same like diet and training that a lot of the elite people are doing, they would make probably more gains than they ever would have wanted to, or, they'd probably get bigger and better results than they would have ever thought. And most of us just jump to, we don't make the progress within our first 6 months to a year. We don't look like our idol. And then we're like, oh, the only reason why I don't look that way is because of the drugs,
Yeah.
But it's, I now being at Marek, after all the labs that I've seen of a lot of our influencers and things that, I would think are probably on stuff, or I assume, and then they come in and, we have a private conversation. I get to hear what they're actually on. I've changed my mind completely. I'm like, damn, there's just some people that put in significant amount of work and they do everything right for years on end and they get great results. It's not the drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's nice about like being in this space as a coach is like, I didn't want people to fuck themselves up the same way that I did. I didn't want people to make that same mistake. And fortunately, like just being a coach in this space, like I have natural athletes and they have made tremendous progress from like start to finish. And it's really cool to see them. It like the proof is in the pudding. You can't hide that, and being somebody who's super data driven, where I track everything, I'm like, yeah, like, it's so transparent to me that like, it's just, you got to nail the basics and you got to give it time. Like, a lot of these guys are like, well, I'm doing everything I need to. And like, my first thing is like, okay, well, walk me through what you ate yesterday. Walk me through what you ate today. Like, what's your sleep and like all of this stuff. And just crumbles usually.
We see that all the time together. Both of you guys and myself, where we have guys who think that they want TRT, which again, I harp on all the time is the silliest thing ever because they're conflating TRT with steroids.
Right.
And I'm like, you know, you already have a 700 testosterone. We're going to bring you to 800 and you think that's magically going to change anything. You were probably 800 an hour ago when you woke up, you know, like your hormones can fluctuate so much just in a day. So that small 100-point bump isn't going to help you. This episode is brought to you by Marek Health. As you know, at Atlas, we're extremely passionate about optimizing all aspects of the human condition. And we believe that starts with one's health. But before we start optimizing, we need to know what we're optimizing for, and we need to know where you're starting. That's why we partner with Marek Health, where you can stop guessing about your health status and actually get a look under the hood. Marek was co-founded by our friend Derek over at More Plates, More Dates as a place where the individual could take their health into their own hands. Marek is a telemedicine company that uses blood work and other metrics to provide valuable insights into how your body is functioning and what might need to be changed in order to improve your performance and longevity. With Marek Health's comprehensive lab tests, you'll receive biomarker feedback with actionable steps to improve your metabolism, your libido, your mood, cognitive function, and so much more. Once you get your labs done, your personal health coach will find a licensed medical provider in your state that can help you to develop a treatment plan. So we worked with Marek to provide our listeners with 2 panels. You can go over to marekhhealth.com/Atlas and order our panel for 10% off using code ATLAS. Choose Atlas Lab Panel and pair it with a lab review from a health coach for a thorough analysis of your results. That's marekhhealth.com/Atlas and use code ATLAS at checkout. You can also order your own desired labs and use code ATLAS to get 10% off your first order. And that took me so long to film, so please go do that, guys. But yeah, we'll be like, you know, there's a 25-year-old guy, I can't gain weight. And then, you know, Michael and I are like, well, what are you eating? And they can't even tell us. I'm like, how do you know you can't gain weight then? Like, if you're telling me you can't gain weight, I expect that you would have told me like, I have, you know, years data where I ate 4,000 calories every day. And my basal metabolic rate is this, but they don't even know those metrics. So I'm like, whoa, you can't make that claim yet, buddy. You know, and first of all, you can't defy the laws of thermodynamics. You can gain weight. Everybody can gain weight. You know, you just haven't figured out what it takes for you to yet.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is your definition of a hard gainer? You know, like, lay that out for me, because that is a popular term that I almost hate, because people like these guys will default to that. You know, they'll default to that so quick. I'm like, I don't know if you're really a hard gainer. You just think you are because you don't eat enough. You know,
exactly.
That's really what it is. So
yeah, like I said, that time that I actually dialed in like a true bulk, I hated it. It was miserable. I really was very uncomfortable. And I'm a food driven guy. I love food. Food's one of my favorite parts of the day. I love it. And so I'm thinking like, yay, this is going to be so much fun. And it's fun for, you know, a month or two. And then you raise and you're like, I do not want to shove another 4,000 calories down my face today. Like, I'm eating my favorite foods at every meal now just so I can get them in and they taste like shit, you know? Like, I wasn't excited about anything. I could eat a cookie and be like, this is not great. You know, like, I'm so much happier now where I'm just on a basic like existence diet. So things are still tasty, because I literally got to a point where I would eat mac and cheese, like a box of mac and cheese for breakfast, and then one in the middle of the day too, because it had enough carbs. And I really like mac and cheese. Like right now, if I were to go make one, I'd be like, this is delicious, because I maybe have one every 6 months, you know? But I was just doing that to be able to get carbs in with like a pound of lean turkey. And I'd have to do that a few times a day. It was awful.
It is. Honestly, like I've said this to so many people, like I would rather diet and be hungry than push food. It is so uncomfortable. If you are pushing like clean food and you're just, let's just say over the 3,000 mark, if you get it close to 3,500, you get close to 4,000, it is awful. It is so uncomfortable.
Yeah, we've all been there. And so we know. So because I know when somebody hasn't been there, when they think like, oh, that sounds so nice, you can eat that much. And like, no, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
No, you don't know. Yeah, you don't know. But yeah, it's just, I think it can't be said enough, you know, that you have to really nail those basics. And that's why, you know, I just recently made that little graphic that I put out there, because it's like, people forget, and they don't want to do the hard stuff. And the hard stuff is really the simple stuff that people forget about. It's the sleep, it's the not training too hard, but it's also making sure you're training hard enough. It's making sure you're getting enough food, drinking enough water, your micronutrients, your stress mitigation, like your relationships outside, like, you know, how stressed are you from work or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, and, you know, you're all of this financially, like all of that matters, you know.
For sure. I don't think people train hard enough either for for most people. Of course, there are a few that do, but you know, when you look around, you know, there's guys who, and I was guilty of this too. You know, I'd go with my friend and we'd be talking in between sets, and then, you know, like, I'm not really feeling exercise today. You know, we'll get that next time. Like, that stuff doesn't happen when you're talking about elite level pros. You know, it's very rare. You know, they're hitting their numbers every single time. They've got their notebook out and they're like, well, last time I was on this incline press with 180 on there, I need to do, you know, like 185 this time. And they're writing it in and getting it done no matter how they feel, you know?
Yeah.
And if it's very similar to the food, when guys are telling me that they're progressive overload, I'm like, I don't think you are. I don't really think you know what that means.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the toughest things to actually teach people unless you're there with them. A lot of times what I do is I have my clients send me videos of their training, and you can tell when somebody is reaching that point of like, they're literally reaching like mechanical failure, like they can't push anymore, or they're reaching this like preconceived like effort level in their head, like, oh, that was hard, like maybe, but you definitely have more. And so sometimes I think there's merit to telling people, not that they should always train to failure, but sometimes there's merit to that when you're first like going through a training phase with somebody, like, hey, like just go until you can't anymore, you know, and let's see what that actually looks like for you. And do they actually train to failure, or are they like, yeah, that was good for me? And I think people forget how uncomfortable you have to be in order to drive that stimulus for growth. You know, it's not comfortable, and it shouldn't be. You know, you have to have that new stimulus there, and a lot of people just don't reach that, and it's okay if that's where they want to stay. You know?
Right. Yeah. 100%. But yeah. And the funny thing, another thing too, is so many people jump to drugs or come to us at Merit wanting TRT when they don't even want a physique that would require those things. You know, it's like most guys probably want to look like Zac Efron or something. And I'm like, dude, you could do this in a year naturally. So easy, you know? It's just, you don't need to do pro cycles to look like your favorite, you know, TV celebrity.
Right. I think they just forget, like, you know, some of the things that when somebody is really, really considering it and they ask me like, hey, what are the things that I should consider? Or like, you know, what are your thoughts? And I was like, you know, you need to remove all of these positive benefits first that you think that you're only focusing on, right? Like people think, oh, I'm going to start on any sort of compound or gear. And they think like, I'm going to get jacked. I'm going to get shredded. I'm going to be strong, like all of these things. And I'm like, well, you need to consider like, hey, how are you going to feel about doing this for a lifetime? You know, like TRT, how are you going to feel about bringing this home into whatever that environment looks like at home with your significant other or your family, or your own interpretation of like, oh, like I'm not natural anymore. Or like if somebody brings it up into conversation, are you going to feel okay with talking about like, yes, I use XYZ, or, you know, what is this stuff going to look like on a day-to-day basis, like in your head, in your home, like with the conversations with the people that you have around you. Like, I never really thought about that. You know, I didn't think about like it's a little different nowadays, right? Like in the past like couple of years, like now we have these clinics, you know, popping up. We have Marek Health. Like this stuff wasn't really around. It was a little bit more taboo like a couple of years ago, right? So when I first started, it was like, oh, are you on gear? Oh, you're not natural then. Like, and you go through this entire thing. It's like, oh fuck. And if you start dating somebody new, and you're like, they find it, or you're like, are you going to try to hide it? I had personal friends who like struggled with that. They're like, fuck bro, I got to hide all my stuff. Like I can't show them. If my parents find out, they're going to lose it. Like
the hardest thing was the refrigerated stuff too. Like the oil and stuff aren't bad. You can put them in the closet. Exactly. But refrigerated. I used to have a bottle of creatine that I said need to be refrigerated, and I dropped the because I'm like, this is never gonna get. Like, they're never gonna want to get into this bottle of creatine. So, because how else are you gonna hide something in the fridge? You know, you're not gonna stick it in a food.
Man, it's a lot to consider, you know. And I think people just forget about. They just think about all the positive stuff. They don't think about like, how is this gonna affect just the rest of your life, even. and just daily conversation. Like, are you okay with that? Like, if somebody asks you at work, like, hey, what are you taking or whatever, like, is it going to cause some like anxiety in your head? Like, oh yeah, that's right, I do take these drugs or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think being transparent and talking and sharing experiences is so valuable, and it really helps to just bring light to the situation on both the positives and the negatives, because, you know, let's be real, there's a ton of positives to it too, as long as you understand like you know, everything and bring context to it, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there about like just drugs or steroids or TRT, like what is the difference or what are they, you know? And so exploring all that is super important. That's why I love having conversations like this.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, man. I'm glad that we have you at Marek because do you teach your, like if somebody comes through Marek and they're a health coach of yours, is it pretty similar to what they would get if they were your own personal client?
Kind of. There's a lot of influence there. Just I can't help like my integrity as a coach taking over and saying, hey, like you're coming to Marek and you are expecting all these goals, but we still need, like, we can help with hormone optimization. I can make sure that your organ function is good. And if you are hoping to, you know, if you're nailing these lifestyle things and you're hoping to take your performance to the next level, like we'll check all your labs, we'll make sure you're good to go here, but that can't come without XYZ. And so a lot of what I do just naturally as a coach, like just, you know, they get that from me. But obviously, like, you know, at Marek, we're not doing like, I'm not, you know, on privately, like I check in with them weekly, right? They tell them, they answer an entire list of questions like, hey, how's your sleep? How's your stress? Like I can look at your food log. You can ask me questions about like specific meals and such. And so it's, you know, it's a little more in depth, you know, with the people that I find at Marek, they kind of get a little bit of a blend, but I try not to dive too much into it because it would take forever to do. I can't do that for everybody. So,
yeah.
But Michael would, I think, with everybody if he could. I mean, I know, like, I mean, he's not understating that. Like, he goes above and beyond for all of his patients, and it's pretty cool to see with the limited amount of time that obviously a lot of the health coaches do have because they're seeing such a large volume of patients come through. And I think that's what's probably the coolest about his approach is like you really want to make sure that everybody has all that nailed down before anything else. Cause it's like, I don't want to give you this list of huge expectations or what you think is going to happen, knowing that like, hey, if you're not doing any of this other stuff, you're probably going to be very disappointed with, you know, what you get, even if we do get on TRT or give you peptides or whatever it may be.
Exactly. Bringing context to that situation, letting people know like, hey, like, yeah, sure. Like we can, these peptides are amazing. You know, they could do XYZ. TRT is amazing. It could do XYZ, but it can't come, you know, without this foundation stuff. And so I do, like, I tell people so often, I'm like, hey, I'm going to give it to you straight. Like, I literally talk some kid out of, you know, I probably spend more time talking people out of testosterone and TRT than I do like saying, yeah, like this would be a good option for you. Like that's easy. I can easily say that with confidence for sure.
I say the exact same thing. Yeah, half the day is spent talking people out of it rather than into it, because there's a lot of misconceptions, like you said, on both sides. And I'm just like, you don't need it, and also it's not going to be as special as you think it is. I think you need to rethink some of these, especially younger guys wanting to go on PEDs, or if they're already on PEDs. Like I'm sure all three of us have seen guys come through who they're young on PEDs and their labs already look terrible. And I had a guy the other day who had liver imaging and heart imaging, and he was like young 20s, and both of them were already messed up. And I'm like, dude, I really hate to be like the Debbie Downer here and to rain on your parade, but can you answer me honestly? Do you see yourself having a future in bodybuilding? Like, is it going to pay the bills? Because if it is, I totally understand that. You know, like maybe it's worth having, you know, some heart issues and liver issues because this is feeding your family. Your kids are going to go to college on this money. I get the sacrifice. But if it's just because you want to look better on Instagram photos, we might need to reevaluate this, you know?
Right.
Like let's really, really think about it, because when I was 24 versus 34, my goals and my desires in life and everything is completely different. Those are two different human beings. So I'm like, like you said, all the things that you got to think about, like think about what you can't do. It's impossible, but am I going to think this way in 10 years? The best way to answer that is, did I think the way that I'm thinking today 10 years ago? Right. And at 24, think about what you were thinking at 14. You know, the change is still the same, even though you're an adult. everything's different. What I cared about
Yeah.
at 24 is so different than 34. And I'm sure when I'm 44, I'm going to be a completely different person than I am right now, you know?
Yeah.
So you got to make those, or you got to try to think about that stuff.
Yeah, you nailed it there. You nailed it there for sure. It's you got to try as hard as you can to put that in context, because it really matters, and it's going to change your life. And I think that's what's so valuable with what we do in our space now. Like, for the people that are both, you know, experienced trainers, lifters, you know, who have been using PEDs for a long time, and or the beginners who are just starting, understanding, hey, why should I do my labs? Or if I do check my labs, what labs should I be checking? And if they're off, what does this mean? And if I do want to push things and I wholly accept the risk, you know, how far can I take that? You know, what are all these in putting these like parameters on these things and understanding them is so valuable. Even if somebody's just natural and they're like, hey, I just want to check this stuff. And I think that this, being in this space at Marek, has really allowed, you know, so much insight and value into labs just for overall optimization, like longevity and performance. You know, it's amazing. And to be on the bodybuilding side, you know, where I do accept, you know, risks there, and I take things from a safer use method, safer, you know, it's never really safe 100%, but I am able to check my labs quite frequently, quite often, you know, check all these lab markers. And if things like go awry, then I have to pull back. But the cool thing is that I know how and where and what to use in order to do that, because of what I learned here, and then from from colleagues around me and from professionals like yourselves. And it's just, there is no better way in time to really bodybuild now with the information and value that we have available to us.
Very true.
And it's kind of crazy to think that bodybuilders, like, I feel like in a way are almost the one that led this charge of like optimization, even for the average person, like we're talking about, for Gen Pop, you know, getting educated to understand what just the routine lab markers mean, what they might be at risk for down the road. Like, so weird to think the guys that have pushed the envelope of health over the years are now kind of the ones that have introduced everybody into this kind of new world, or as Peter Attia calls it, medicine 3.0. Like, I think that's a pretty cool thing to evolve from that. Yeah,
absolutely. I think, you know, because don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of merit to, you know, people saying like, oh, you're a bodybuilder, like you look great, but you're not healthy. And that's so true. Like, bodybuilding is extreme. It is not healthy, especially like when guys are dieting down and they're looking absolutely like shredded. Yeah, it looks cool, but it is not healthy by any means. But at least there's a space like this where you can, you know, we can check our markers and make sure that, like, well, there are better ways to do this for sure if you continue to go down that road and want to push it. And there should be some hard stops in there. And you have people like us who will say, hey, you need to make this hard stop. Otherwise, it's going to get really bad. So,
So I wanted to dive into a little bit lab work too, because I think you're great at analyzing this stuff. So say hormones, we don't need to worry about that. We all know testosterone, estrogen, but what are other markers that bodybuilders probably specifically, or performance athletes, should be looking at outside of just hormones? Because everybody gets hung up on just the hormones. And I think where people made mistakes in the past was only ordering the testosterone and estradiol and maybe prolactin if they were having some gyno. But what are some other markers that you're looking at with your athletes after hormones are dialed in to ensure that they're going to be not only healthy, but I guess even more performance, like ensuring that they have ideal performance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, in no necessarily particular order here, like oxidative stress markers, looking at, you know, your HSCRP, looking at homocysteine. You know, we have these really cool markers. You know, we have ADMA and SDMA now, like just the overall endothelial integrity, making sure that, you know, somebody is not like putting themselves in overdrive in this vasoconstriction, like, you know, all the time. Obviously looking at your overall lipid profile, you know, that it's not just like, hey, HDL and LDL, like one's good and one's bad. Like, let's look at your ApoB, you know, let's look at this entire profile here to see how you're doing. Outside of that, just organ function too. Like, I mentioned SDMA, like it's great for overall kidney function. We can check out your cystatin C outside of just your typical liver enzymes like your AST, ALT. And one thing on those specifically is like, they can be elevated, but the ratio at which they are elevated, and if like ALT is higher than AST or if AST is higher than ALT, also looking at like ALK-Phos and GGT specifically, like all of these things are so important. And I used to be that guy that was just, I'm gonna check my testosterone and my estradiol, and I think that's probably good.
Right.
But for sure those like oxidative stress markers are key. And then you also have to consider too, like your overall metabolic profile. Like can't be understated. And like I said, these are in no particular order, right? Like you're fasting insulin, not just like you're fasting glucose. Like you have to check your A1C. You want to check your like all the thyroid markers. If you're just checking TSH, like this, what is this? This is it's 2023 now. Like you got to check your free T3, your free T4. If you have antibodies, like how would you even know? Like
yeah.
you got to check all of this stuff. And so it can't be understated enough. You literally have to check like as many markers as possible. For me personally, I check like, our big complete panel that we have at Marek, like our 850 panel, like I do that for sure once a year. And then because I push things in the bodybuilding, space, like I get the 450 panel literally like at least once a quarter. So, from liver function, metabolic profile, thyroid, like organ function, all of this stuff is so important.
Yeah. If somebody is inflamed and insulin resistant, is that going to impact their gains?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just got to figure like if they're not able to like just from a basic level shuttle those carbohydrates more efficiently, if they're just becoming more and more insulin resistant, and then you factor in their sleep, which they're probably not sleeping very well, and you factor in their overall like perceived stress factored on top of their like what's going on inside. Obviously there's like internal oxidative stress there, and that is 100%, like without a doubt, is black and white, going to inhibit either their growth or their fat loss. And then you just think of like cardiac function too. Like all of this is so imperative to make sure that they're on top of, because if we're here to make gains, but then we have all this oxidative stress going on in the body where like CRP's up, homocysteine's up, they're completely insulin resistant, or at least showing like significant signs of that resistance and metabolic dysfunction. It's metabolic syndrome, we see it all the time. For sure, it's absolutely going to inhibit their progress. Let's just say progress overall.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like because there's some people out there who maybe they are making money and they don't care about the health part, and I understand. I mean, of course they care, but they're willing to risk health a little bit. But I definitely want to impress the idea that to be healthy helps you to make more progress. That if your liver is dysfunctional, you're going to have a hard time building up protein. Liver makes proteins. If you're inflamed, you're going to mess up the metabolic cascades of protein synthesis. Same with insulin resistance. If your cells aren't doing what they're supposed to do and their insulin is signaling to them, how are you going to shuttle in the nutrients to grow that muscle?
Exactly.
And so even if you're somebody who's like, I can push the envelope here and all I care about is gains and progress, like, well, you're actually going to make more progress if you're healthier,
Yeah. And I see that a lot, especially when it comes to like, prep in general. If like somebody has like this insulin resistance, and then they're like this, fuck it attitude, which, to some degree can help them because they're like driven no matter what. But then in other senses is like, hey man, you got to learn when to like pull back, because you got this like, and then God, on top of that, you have people who binge restrict, right? They have the whole binge restrict thing. And so it's like, hey, I'm going to do well for this show. You prep for this show, and then all of a sudden you binge, and then you're just driving yourself into further stress on top of weeks and weeks on what was already stressed through your like chronic dieting, essentially. Then you binge. And you kind of go back and forth through this, and there's a psychological aspect of like, well, I don't visually like how I look in the mirror because I'm gaining all this mass back or this fat or this water. And then, you know, they go through this binge restrict thing, and it's like, it's so tough, like just metabolically on the body, that people absolutely suffer through it. And it's a nightmare. It is a nightmare to work through.
Yeah. So, and that's going to hinder so much progress. So
Mm-hmm.
super cool to have you to talk about that, man.
Yeah.
Josh, was there anything else you wanted to touch on with this strapped fella?
Just talking about lab markers and obviously what's important to you and what you look at now, Michael. Anything prophylactically that you do from a health standpoint now, as far as medications, supplements, stuff that you recommend for a lot of your clients, or anything that's maybe been a game changer for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it kind of goes without saying, like using an ARB like Telmisartan is like so huge. I think it's so helpful in the space. Obviously, the dose is kind of dependent on like the phase that you're in and how many androgens you have. Also utilizing like, you know, ezetimibe, you know, just inhibiting that, you know, cholesterol absorption in the gut. That is, those, I'd say two things, you know, there's several, but those two things have been dramatically helpful in my own labs, you know, just being able to see the changes there in my health markers have been incredible. Let's see what else. This is just on top of like your over the counter stuff, just making sure that, you know, you have your NAC, you have your TUDCA, you know, all these basic vitamin D plus D3 plus K2, you know, people are like, yeah, I take D3 all the time. But like, you know, just knowing these like little nuanced things between like what over the counter supplements you should take, like, oh, I take fish oil, I should be good. Well, okay, well, like how many grams of fish oil, like how much is actually in there, you know, and just stuff is underdosed all the time. And yeah, so I have like such a health supplement list. It's through the roof. But I guess prophylactically, you know, like I'd say like two pillars there would probably be like Telmisartan and ezetimibe for sure.
Those are my two favorites for sure. I always get shit whenever Marek like posts up a video of me talking about Telmisartan and somebody's like, what if they don't have high blood pressure? I'm like, well, yeah, well, no shit, you know, but show me a bodybuilder who's middle of cycle, who has normal or lower blood pressure that we would prefer. Because our goal is usually below 120/80. So I would honestly say, show me most human beings in general population these days that have below 120/80, and that's low. So when I make a broad recommendation like that, of course, if you're coming in, you know, at 115/75, you don't need to throw in 80 milligrams of Telmisartan. Yeah. That's insane. I was never implying that. You know, exactly. Michael is not doing that either, but we're saying for a bodybuilder using a ton of these compounds that activate that system that the ARB will help to suppress, it can be huge. Yeah, and I love, and ezetimibe is great. That's probably, I've been on it now for probably going on 4 years, 5 years, and will probably continue to for life. I love that compound.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's a great question. I usually, those are like my, you know, big recommendations there, considering obviously. So
is there any cool over the counter supplements that you're into right now?
You know what I really can't get enough of is like phosphatidylserine. Man, that has been so like, it's helped like my sleep, just overall, like I think like anxiety, and man, it's made such a difference. And I didn't think, and I'm one of those guys that's like, no, I'm not gonna allow this to like change my mindset. Like, you know, it's like I'm against it. Like I don't want this to play into my head like a placebo thing. But that one's been a big one that I honestly didn't really expect. Like,
how much and when are you taking it?
I take 150 milligrams, and I usually take it at night. You know, I take it with my fish oil just for better absorption. But I know that, you know, people can take 300 or more. I haven't taken, you know, more than that. I do take KSM 66 sometimes, you know, ashwagandha. And that's kind of it. Like I haven't messed around too much with like, I'm interested in trying like some saffron or something like that, just to help with like mental acuity sort of thing. But I haven't tried any of that yet. So lion's mane's cool.
I didn't like lion's mane. Lion's mane killed my libido.
Really?
Yeah, because it's a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor as well, and so I definitely felt the reduction. I was taking it for a while, and then there was like, whoa, this, like I could definitely feel a difference in my overall drive.
Yeah, Yeah. So those are the big ones. But
And then my favorite supplement recently that's kind of surprised me would be glutathione. Have you used it?
I actually haven't, like I have N-acetylcysteine, obviously like a precursor there, but I haven't, and I'm very curious, and I do want to try it.
Yeah, I like you. I don't, not many things impress me, and I don't, I'm never like this is. I'm not going to be persuaded by just a placebo. And I've done everything now to the highest strength drugs, and so nothing really impresses me. Because even like trying is like, I kind of like, I'm not really too impressed by it, to be honest. But though when I first used glutathione the first time around, because Memo over at Marek Health sent it to me as a gift, and I went had to do a Spartan race, and it was one of the middle range ones. So I think it was 8 or 10 miles, and I haven't ran that much in so long. On top of all of the other obstacles, and I made sure that I was going to hit every obstacle, and I was going to try to run the most I could. I thought at the end for sure I was going to have rhabdo, without a doubt. I was like, I'm going to have rhabdo because I'm pretty much like I'm less than a weekend warrior right now. All I do is resistance train for an hour on the weekends. I'm going to die. So when I got home, I used, I think like 600 milligrams of glutathione. The next day I was barely sore. Like, wow. I think my calves felt a little bit tender from because they were cramping at the end. I was pretty surprised by that. And then there's probably been 5 or more times where I felt a sickness coming on, where your throat is getting, you're like, shit, tomorrow I'm going to be full blown sick. I know it. And I'll hit myself with glutathione and I feel significant improvement, where the next day I don't even feel sick. So that one's kind of surprised me.
Interesting. Yeah. I am very I do want to try it. I absolutely want to try it. And I probably will now.
I just have it on hand for that, because I don't know how much utility for me it would have just every day be hitting myself with that,
Right.
And then I was talking to one of our other PCCs, James Petersack. He's friggin' wealth of knowledge. And he was talking about like supplementing with glutathione may suppress, there's kind of like a negative feedback loop there. So he was suggesting taking it with NAC too when you do. So most days I take NAC, but every now and then I'll hit myself with glutathione, and just hopefully, I'm not suppressing anything because I have the precursor in with the NAC.
Right. Yeah, no, I like NAC. I take that a lot. I forgot to mention, I do take like injectable L-carnitine, and at first I wasn't quite sure about it, but I do feel like it's definitely helpful, on many different levels there. So
endurance boost wise in prep, especially
endurance, maybe I guess it would kind of be tough to say because I'm in such a heavy deficit, like how much is it actually contributing to this fat loss outside of that, but it's no doubt absolutely helping. You know what I mean? I think I can put aside like any placebo and actually like measurably see how much of an endurance and even like overall energy level the difference there. And I told you guys I was in the supplement game for a long time, so I probably tried every oral L-carnitine out there. It's not even worth taking, So.
When I take L-carnitine, I'll even tell like clients who come through, like, I don't know how much utility it has on just your everyday Joe Blow who doesn't have any particular goal, but I think like you right now, if it has a few percentage improvement, that's great, because you have a really particular goal. So if you're just going to be injecting it daily for, I don't know, a better workout, but you have no end goal, that kind of sucks, because it's like, it's kind of painful, it doesn't, but I used it before. I probably used it about 4 years ago now. I used to buy it from Chase Irons. Do you know who that is?
Yeah.
He would make it, and I would, because I didn't know where else to get it. You could get it like Amino Asylum, or he was making, I'm like, I'll support a YouTuber. So he would send it over to me, but now I get it from Marek Health. But I would use it. I use it during a bulk, and I felt like I definitely stayed a bit leaner. And then also, I never really cut, but it definitely helped me to stay leaner when I wasn't on the bulk and just kind of coming down off of that.
Yeah, for sure. So that's what's nice is like, if we getting into like the actual, whether it's like over the counter supplements or like, not even like peptides, just like this other like ancillary type of stuff that is like really, really beneficial and can really help on many levels. And I think that's another advantage that's probably not talked about enough, because everybody's like, oh, the answer is TRT. And like, no, not
right.
Really. So.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, I've been diving deeper into like micronutrients. Like now my new thing that I've been doing for the past few weeks is liver capsules and greens powders and collagen. I get 3 of those, just because I don't eat any organ meat and I don't plan on it. It's not appealing to me. I'm never going to choke down a ball sack. I'm just not going to do it. And so, yeah, I'm like, I'll try some liver capsules, see what kind of improvement. And I can't tell anything off the bat, but I'm sure at a cellular level, I'm getting a lot of nutrients. I don't take my multi anymore. I'm just taking that as a multi. I do think that I think everybody would admit that when you get things from food or food sources, there's better bioavailability, and there's just something with nature's magic there. So if I'm just dehydrating an organ, it's probably better than a synthetic multivitamin. And then a greens powder, same idea. I don't need enough greens. I know some people think greens are bad for you. I'm not in that camp. I like collagen, I think too, I'm never sore, aching any place. I take Derek's Gorilla Mind. Do you take any collagen?
I don't take any collagen. I'm honestly like not opposed to it. It's kind of like one of those things I've just been like lazy about. You know what I mean? I don't know, but I should but I'm with you for sure. Like on the greens, I literally take those every morning with glutamine. Obviously take creatine. Like if these people are taking TRT, by the way, and they're like all these compounds, and they're not taking like the most basic, like most studied sports supplement like out there, what are they doing? So, but yeah, so I definitely take greens and glutamine like every morning for sure.
For sure.
Or the people that are opposed to taking supplements but want to take TRT. I'm like, tell me how that works, please.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, there's too many pills. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my biggest pet peeve, man. Not wanting medications, but wanting TRT. Because I'm fine if you don't want to take any medications, but you do realize that TRT falls into that category.
Exactly.
It's like it's made in a lab. I don't care. And it has an ester attached to it. Like I understand it's a bioidentical hormone, but you're not really. Your body's not producing testosterone or testipionate or testpropionate.
Yeah.
Or thinking there's like a huge difference between medication and supplements. Like they both have pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics. Like it's just one's a registered FDA medication and the other one's an over-the-counter supplement. Like they both can be hugely beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just today I had a patient ask me what the difference between like metformin and berberine was, because during his during his lit review, he felt like they had very similar mechanism. Like it's true. They're very, very similar. And in my opinion, when there's two things that are very similar, say red yeast rice and a statin, I'm always going to be more towards let's go towards the FDA approved, the regulated one and the studied one, and for some reason, people's minds are set like, I could take this one that has almost no studies on it. That's not regulated. It doesn't, they could be giving me Ajax and freaking chalk and stuff in there, and it's not regulated. I'll take that. It's safer than the statin. I'm like, what the hell?
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll take it and we'll do your lab work and we'll follow up and we'll see how well that works.
Yeah, exactly.
Because supplement companies have a history of being super honest, right? As Michael would know.
Exactly. Yeah.
What supplement company are you with now, Michael? So people can use your code.
I work with Core Nutritionals. I actually started using them when I was managing a supplement shop, and I guess just you become like a little bit sour and biased towards like supplement companies when you spend so much time, and like I created my own, so I was like really all about transparent labs and who's using proprietary blends and who's not, and like what's actual quality stuff that like tastes good and that's good for you. And so it was after that point where a while had passed where I don't even have my supplement company anymore, but I started working with Core Nutritional, so I use them diligently every day. My code is my username MAWSOME, and it gets 20% off of anything. I actually refer a lot of my Marek clients to Core Nutritionals, say, hey, like I literally take the greens, I take the glutamine, I take the creatine, like their pre-workout, their isolate powder, all that stuff. So great quality brand. Been using them for a long time, so that's who I roll with now.
I've got
who's their natural guy? Yeah, there we go. I was going to say, dude, he's been around for forever. And I remember he was like the natural bodybuilder back in the day.
Yeah, he's huge.
If that's all he's taking, I mean, obviously go buy that shit. No, he looks phenomenal. He's got a great looking physique, man.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, he's got a kick-ass gym too. I'd love to make it out to the East Coast to check out, his gym. But
I've got the pudding, like I told you.
Oh, it's
have you
so
ever had
good.
that, Josh?
I haven't. Michael always hypes it up, though. I need to try
really?
it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it. I like it. I have the Moose Tracks. The Moose Tracks, I was a little not disappointed. I was disappointed in myself that I didn't look at the macros because it was like, holy fuck, 12 grams of fat. Like that's like not what I was, I don't buy protein shakes to eat. I would just eat a freaking ice cream bar at that point or a candy bar,
Yeah.
So I'm disappointed in myself, not in the protein. But I've had their other ones are delicious too.
Yeah.
Because I've for years have made my own kind of with casein. I just prefer to eat things rather than pounds, like a liquid, like watery whey is gross to me. So midday, if I want, like if I'm hungry, if I'm in a diet, I like to be able to eat some volume, and that's amazing. I love that stuff. It's delicious.
Yeah, I actually just got a Ninja Creamy blender.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
And I froze it and I put my isolate in there. I actually put pudding in there last night. Oh my God. It's literally like froyo, like frozen yogurt. It is.
Yeah.
Real.
Well, if you did that with like the Moose Tracks one, it would probably taste legitimately like the ice cream. That's what it does.
It's ridiculous.
The only reason for those listening that it has that fat content is because he has legitimate like Moose Tracks ice cream, peanut butter cups and chunks of chocolate. So it's like, it's definitely not the cutting phase, like, go-to choice. What's your favorite flavor of it? I've tried cookies and cream, Moose Tracks, and I think just a vanilla.
Oh, the Rocky Road is probably my favorite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really love the Rocky Road. But yeah, I use it obviously like right now. I'm barely using it. So I had a little bit of it, but for the most part, I'm using like their ISO protein. Like their red velvet is so damn good. So I'll use that.
So, code MAWSOME. We'll put it all down in the description below. And where else can people find you? Obviously at Marek Health, and I want to put a link in where people could meet up with you directly. So we'll put that in. And then where else can people find you? On
Instagram, just my handle is MAWSOME. I do have a YouTube that I would love to put more content on there. I just haven't. So, or setthestandardfitness.com, if people are looking to go, and all these links are in my like bio on Instagram and stuff like that. So I have a TikTok that I don't really use, but I had a video blow up on there because I bent this like barbell. It has like 12 million views.
Oh damn, really?
Yeah,
I should have wrote on that.
I bent this barbell doing a hip thrust at this gym in San Diego. Just a funny story. And I did it on accident. I was like, oh fuck, like the bar bent. And is long story short, the gym owner was kind of an asshole. He was like, hey, you either replace the bar or you get kicked out. And I was like, fuck, man, that's a little aggressive. And I posted it on TikTok, dude. It fucking like Eddie Hall and like all these like people posted it, and like it got crazy. But
I don't have TikTok, but I'm gonna have to look this up. I want to see it.
I'll send you the video.
All right, cool. Yeah, send me that when we're done here.
Yeah, but yeah,
cool, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you guys.
Anything else you want to tell the people?
Just I think if anybody is looking to enhance not just their physique but their overall knowledge and value in this space, then obviously listening to podcasts like this, but investing in their health and education is the best thing that they can do. And whether they go through Marek Health or they find Atlas or they just find you guys, I mean, I think that there is so much value in this, and it'll help them on so many levels, from like a mental standpoint to just physically as well. So just thank you guys for allowing me to be here and talk.
Of course, man.
Absolutely, brother. We enjoyed it.
Exactly. Yeah, and I hope a lot of our listeners go find you in some way, because I think you're great. Obviously, so I wanted to get you on. So,
and to blow smoke up his butt one last time, like when he says he's detail oriented, I've seen Michael's patient plans; they're insane. The Excel documents are a thing of beauty. So you totally get to the nth degree of somebody who's invested in your health. So yeah, I think it would definitely be worth their while.
Yeah, we couldn't get a progress pic here, but go on his Instagram. You'll see he's got a legit physique. It's actually, he's not just another influencer. Like he's actually got a legit bodybuilding physique and doing great.
7 weeks out, right?
What's that, Sam? Yeah, a little less than 7 weeks out. So if all goes well, we'll be officially a pro.
And your wife's going for her pro card too, right?
Yeah, less than 3 weeks. So,
awesome, man.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you're not allowed back on until you're a pro. So.
I look forward
next time we get you on, I want to say IFBB Pro Michael Warner on the description.
I would love that. So
better for the algorithm.
Yeah, let's make that. So 7 weeks. Let's go.
All right. We'll see you guys in the next one.
All right, fellas.